I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hornady Podcast. I'm your host, Seth, and today I'm joined around the table, a full table on the Hornady Podcast, some special guests from CCI and from Remington, and I'm excited to get into what you guys have to say and to talk about what you guys are doing here. So, to my left, special guest, co-host on the podcast, Audrey Mays from the Remington Podcast. Across from her, Jason Slinkard from CCI and Leland from Remington. Guys, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And thanks for squeezing this into the schedule because right now, Zombies in the Heartland 3-gun match. We've been hosting that match for well over a decade, and it just keeps going on because people keep coming. We've done a really good job, I think, obviously I'm biased, that this match is hard enough to challenge a seasoned competitor, but welcoming enough, if you've never ran 3-gun, that you can scrape whatever guns you got out of your safe, run what you brung, and have a good time. And that's how I view it. What do you guys think?
Seth, this is my 9th year. I've only missed your first inaugural year, and I've been here every year since. And I've always used it as a training tool for people that work for me that have never done any type of shooting before. I will bring them here, and this is their first entry most of the time because this is a perfect match. It's low key. Everybody's here to have a great time. You could focus on amateurs and let them and help them walk it through a stage. And I've had a huge success rate in the 10 years I've been actually bringing people to matches. I've had a huge success rate with this one to get them involved. One of my former employees, I brought her to this match, and now Lori. She shoots all the time.
And she's
PRS,
good.
yes.
Yeah.
And this is what started it all. And so I've always used this in all of my employees' evals. Every year they have to do one match a year or something outside of their comfort zone in the firearms industry. To what I say, look for the duct tape. So while they're there, and this is a perfect match example where you look for the duct tape, you look for something a customer has done themselves, some self-modification or something they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you see somebody else has done something similar. And then you'll see a third person. If you see 3 people with it, there's probably something there.
Yeah, product innovation.
Yeah, and it's just perfect for that. I think it's so important to get people out there, especially young talent out there, and get them in our sport and let them see what's going on. And the zombie match is perfect for that.
100%. Yeah, and as Steve Hornady says, the zombies seem to be immortal. They keep coming back, so we'll keep shooting them. And for you guys, Leland and Audrey, have you ever done anything like this before?
No, and I'm lucky enough to be one of the ones that Slinkard brought with him this year. And so much confidence was grown just after stage 1. We started on stage 10. And, the ROs kind of, if you tell them you're amateur, they just help you out through the stage.
Right.
And a huge confidence builder. I ran my first stage completely clean, and I was like, wow, I'm hooked.
This is supposed to be hard? Are you kidding me?
Right. I already told Jason, I was like, I'm buying your things and I'm taking them. And I'm going to do it myself. So, yeah.
That's cool. Leland, what about you?
I've shot a little bit of practical shooting. I did a little bit of USPSA and PCSL and stuff like that before, but never 3-gun, which is, 3 times the stuff going on. But I think the coolest thing about today, which was unlike experiences I've had previously, specific to zombies, is like you were saying, you have some people like Jerry Mitchell that could go out there and they just...
Never heard of him. Is he good?
Yeah, he's pretty good. Yeah,
yeah, right.
And I grew up watching YouTube and all the content those guys have made, just burning it up, being the great shooters they are. And then you have people like Audrey and I who haven't shot it before, and the ROs go up and say, hey, do you need some coaching or guidance? And when you're going, they're giving you pointers and like, hey, hit that, you're good, keep moving. Like that's you can't overstate how helpful that is for someone who hasn't shot it before. Yeah. There's a lot going on. You want to have a good time. Want to be safe.
You want to be safe, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's like, I don't know, it just eases mind,
Yeah.
It's a good time.
Well, we'll take this time to address the listener and just announce, if you have a multi-gun sport competition around you, you need to go do it. Just go do it. And I think, you've done some competition, but Audrey, you coming in as a complete novice, it's so welcoming. The people there, the environment, the ROs, like it's not intimidating. It might be intimidating in your mind, but once you get there and you get immersed in it, everybody's there to help you. And like you mentioned, you started on stage 10, but by the time you did all the stages, you walked off that range probably more confident than you've ever been with a firearm.
Yeah, definitely in my abilities. And I was telling Jason too that when I strapped on my belt for the first time, I had major imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I look cool, but I feel dumb. You know what I mean? And after the stages today, I feel comfortable now. So
Awesome.
it's nice. Yeah.
Well, let this be the call to action to the listener. Get out there and compete. Now, another topic, changing of gears that we need to address. I said co-host because you are a host with the Remington podcast. So from the Hornady podcast, tell our listeners where they can get the Remington podcast and what kind of topics you guys are talking about.
Oh, yeah. So the Remington podcast, we talk about all things ammunition from hunting and shooting sports. You know, we deep dive a lot into duck hunting and shotgun shooting sports.
Okay.
And you can find us anywhere you stream podcasts. And we also post videos on YouTube.
Right on. So appreciate you jumping in on co-host. And one more thing that we need to address before we get into today's topics, because I feel like there's some technical aspects of what you guys do specifically that our listeners will benefit from. But we need to address the fact that his hat says Remington. Her podcast is Remington. And I feel like there is some misconception maybe on the general consumer level that, you know, this is we're a divided industry. And I would say largely we're in cooperation, if
Very
you will.
much.
Like, we're competing against each other together, and we're doing it with a good relationship. And obviously with CCI and with Remington, that's
I've
a
always
big
said
deal.
Good competition and good friends, they breed awesome products because we compete against each other the whole time. I mean, take about some of the most fierce competitions I've had in my life have been with my best friend. You know how it is. You go to the range and you're doing that, or heck, even doing anything.
Literally, doing almost anything.
It becomes it's a competition and it's fun. It's like, oh yeah, look what I can do.
Oh, you can do that. Look
awesome.
what I can do.
Exactly. But that triggers so much innovation. It makes us the whole industry better when we do that.
100%.
I was going to add, and I'm glad you brought that up because, like, I think it's really important specific to the gun industry because the gun industry and people who are into firearms in general or users of it are always under scrutiny. So it's really good to be able to have connection with other people within the industry, you know, and not just be a complete division.
Yeah, it makes the industry better for us as industry professionals, but it makes the industry better for the consumer.
100%.
Yep.
100%.
And I would say, like, most people in the industry are consumers.
Oh,
so we all want to make the best product because we use it.
I spend a lot of money in this industry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're about to spend some more money in this industry for the 3-gun stuff.
That's
Dang
for
near
sure.
break even on my paychecks.
Right. So with that aside, it is cooperation. We do have great industry partners, and I'm glad we can use the Hornady podcast platform to get some information out there. So the last thing before we get into some more technical stuff is the people need to know a little peek behind the curtain, who you are, what you do, what your title is, and maybe, Slinkard, you've been in this industry for a while. What was you grew up hunting, shooting, and got into it? What did that look like for each of you? We'll start with you.
First off, again, my name's Jason Slinkard. I'm director of all Rimfire powder and primers for the entire Kinetic group. So brand agnostic. It doesn't matter if it's Federal, Remington, or CCI. If it's Rimfire powder and primers, I'm in charge of it. It's an exciting job. I got into this as a kid. My dad used to pay me my allowance in .22 ammo. I mean, he would go out and cut wood, and I would go down on the pond bank, and I would he had a berm built up for me. And,
Where'd you grow up?
In Jeff City, Missouri.
Okay.
Outside a little town outside of Jeff City.
Perfect.
So, and I can remember every 2 weeks, my dad would be like, all right, you did all your chores. Let's go get your brick. And we'd go out there.
Back when bricks were $5.
Yeah, we used to have so much fun. I ain't that old. They were like 10, but Anyway, so, that's how I got the nick for it. I loved it. And I ended up going into college for law enforcement and went into a police department. I used to work for Warrensburg Police Department in Warrensburg, Missouri, right out 11 miles from Whiteman Air Force Base, just right outside of Kansas City. I spent 7 years on with that police department and actually taught at the National Police Institute as a police academy adjunct instructor for a lot of years.
Okay.
And left law enforcement to pursue. I love guns. I've always have.
Yeah.
I love ammunition. I love developing products. So I took an opportunity to go to Midway USA, and that's where I really learned the industry part of it.
Sure.
and got to really understand what our consumers are. And really, I was in charge of their self-defense knives and tools. And I started out where I met Jason, Hornady, and everybody else I was in charge of ammunition at the time and reloading buyer.
Okay.
So kept working through there for a couple of years, and then I got recruited by Bushnell to come and run RCBS.
All right.
And
another cooperation type of relationship.
And a bunch of Hoppies was one of the ones I did. And I worked for them for several years for the last 8 years, and then last 2 years they brought me over to the ammunition side. So had a very thankful career. I mean, I've got to do a lot of cool things and see a lot of cool people that I never would have got to do if I stayed in law enforcement. I loved law enforcement, but this still gives me that niche. I still get to teach those guys. I'm still a certified instructor that'll go and teach at academies and stuff. But man, it's just, there's something about messing with product. You know exactly what I mean.
Exactly
designing the new
about.
stuff, it gets you going. It's so much fun.
Yep. Well, I'm glad you're in the industry and glad we have such a good relationship. Leland, I'm guessing younger than Slinkard. What got you in the industry? What did you grow up doing?
Just a little bit, but no. I started out as a mechanical engineering student. I graduated actually just about a year ago, a little over a year ago. And I've always loved guns, and I wanted to get into the gun industry. And, I didn't have an upbringing necessarily, with a lot of people in my family hunting or anything like that. I always was interested in it, but it just wasn't what my family was super driven with.
Okay.
But I love guns. Ammo and guns are my thing.
Yeah, once you're infected, you're infected. It's hard to get that funk out of there.
Yeah, it's permanent, right? And anyway, I was blessed when I graduated. I was a mechanical engineering graduate. I got a position as a research and development engineer with Remington. And right now, I am primarily the sole and primary engineer for R&D for rimfire and handgun. So I help out with rifle and shot shell as well, but that's the focus. And I guess the best way to explain it is I love mechanical engineering, but I get to shoot guns. I get to make ammo. I get to make things that don't exist, and that's like, I don't know. I go to work every morning and I get to do what I think would be fun to do on a Saturday on the weekend.
And you get to break even on your paychecks working in this industry.
Yeah, heck yeah, of course.
Yeah. That is pretty
you
cool.
don't break even. You usually charge a little too.
Well, you've only worked for Remington for about a year, a little over a year.
It's just almost exactly a year ago, about a week ago. Yep.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, he's already made huge strides.
Yes, very much so.
Coming out with new ranch hand, new golden hunter.
Yeah, he's done a great job. He's got a bright future.
That's awesome.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
And there's a lot of listeners to this podcast that I'll interact with at a trade show or at the airport or wherever they bump into me at. And how do I get a job doing that? Well, that's a great example of it. Mechanical engineering is a great place to start, to have that background and to have the degree is one thing, but the coursework that you go through in mechanical engineering gives you a thought process, and that process works whether you're doing manufacturing engineering or civil engineering or R&D. Yeah. And so that's a pretty cool opportunity. And good for you, man.
The 22 Advanced Rifle Cartridge easily outperforms all other 22 caliber cartridges in its class, producing 22 250 performance in an AR-15 platform. The 22 ARC is engineered to take full advantage of the most aerodynamic 22 caliber bullets. This means tighter groups, increased accuracy, and an exceptional shooting experience. 22 Advanced Rifle Cartridge from Hornady.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll just add this too for like the listeners, and I try to put myself back into the position. Like, I grew up just watching YouTube videos about guns and reading gun books, and there's so many people out there, like you were saying, who are always trying to find an in, right? And you don't have to be a mechanical engineer to get into the super technical stuff. And I think that, if you're interested in being in the gun industry, which anybody who is in guns should be, just start making calls and trying to learn about it and get your foot in the door, because it's such a inclusive, and like once you're in the gun industry, you're probably here to stay.
It's a small industry.
Oh, yeah. It is.
Yep. Very small. So going over to you, Audrey, what'd you grow up doing, shooting, hunting, and how'd you get into the gun industry, and how'd you get to be the host of the Remington podcast?
Yeah, I grew up with a dad who, kind of ignored the fact that I was a girl. And took me hunting, every weekend. That's what I grew up doing. And, when I was 7, I harvested my first whitetail.
Nice.
And before
you
that,
must be from Texas.
Oh yeah, I am from South Texas. Yeah, and before that, it was all rabbits, all the time, and I've just gone up from there. And I haven't really been a gun nut, but guns are part of what I love to do.
It's a tool,
right?
Yeah,
exactly. So, kind of came up that way. I went to Texas A&M. I got my degree in architecture.
Sweet.
Yeah. And by the fourth year, I was like, this is not it. This is not what I want to do. Yeah. And so I went to get my degree in media from CU Boulder, and my thesis was wildlife conservation.
Right on.
Yep. And then kind of broke into the space doing that. I made like a little podcast for them, and I applied to Remington when they had a job opening for a marketing specialist. And Joel Hodgson called me and said, hey, you want to come work for Remington and make our podcast? And I was like,
kinda now.
Like, a brand new college graduate being offered to make the Remington podcast. That was crazy. So 2 years later, I'm still doing it.
That's pretty fantastic. And that's got to be kind of cool. Leland, we were talking, we mentioned it being a small industry. You mentioned Joel Hodgson. Well, that's Joel Hodgson of the Hodgson family, family brand of propellants. And that's pretty cool how small of an industry it is. And
it's crazy. I had no idea who he was.
Sure.
When he first called me, and then
you do now.
Yeah, exactly. And then they were like, "Oh my gosh, everyone, you get to work for Joel Hodgson, like the Hodgsons." I'm like, "Yes, that's him."
Yeah, no big deal. That's right. Awesome, guys. Well, with those formalities kind of out of the way, I think they're important to do for our listener, because I feel like the consumer might not understand how small of an industry this is and how this cooperation between brands works. And it's cool to see the personal nature of the people in this industry. And that's what drives the industry. And, Slink, you mentioned looking for the duct tape stuff.
Yep.
Like, well, if 3 people are doing it, maybe we need to innovate a new product. And there's so much innovation that happens from the industry professionals being active users of the product.
100%.
Yeah, inundated with hunting, with shooting, with competing. And that's really important, I think, for our consumer to see, because, again, we're not just robotic, giant, board of directors and huge marketing teams. Like, we're a small industry of people who care about what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you got to, if you're not an end user, how are you going to build something for somebody that's usable for them? How are you going to address their need if you don't have
There's a big list of products
it's hard.
that were designed that way.
Yeah.
That failed
and they're not there
miserably.
anymore. Usually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And companies, too, to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, let's get into some technical stuff. And maybe the last thing before we get into technical stuff, if you guys would explain why you guys are here together, that, CCI, Remington, obviously federal. So some of the consumer may not understand that ownership architecture.
Yeah, I mean, we're all owned by the Kinetic group. Used to be Vista Outdoors, and they own each individuals. But what's really cool about our company is, yes, we are all owned under the same umbrella, but we keep separate identities for everything. So Remington's built at Remington in Arkansas. Federal's built at Anoka, Minnesota. Lewiston builds all of our CCI and Spear products. I mean, we maintain it. Those employees bleed those colors. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And then we all report, and we get to share knowledge in between.
Yep.
So it's just a really big factory of understanding and going back and forth and pitching ideas. It works well.
Yeah, I would say so. And it benefits the consumer. One, it benefits them that there are still separate companies doing separate things, but the innovation in some of that stuff is still, it flows freely between the companies. And that's pretty unique. So starting to get into some technical stuff, we have, you said powders, propellants, primers, rimfire. And one thing that we've done on our podcast is really taken some deep dives into, things like barrels, how barrels are made, external ballistics, internal ballistics, which is a really misunderstood topic, and powder. And we have great relationships with, powder manufacturers. But one thing we haven't touched is primers. And that bank switch is really important.
Yeah.
Like, vitally important.
It's the most, in my mind, it's probably, well, let's put it this way. If that doesn't work, doesn't matter what else.
Yeah, right. So let's talk about, maybe hit it at some high levels, and we'll go deep where we need to on what is a primer. Everybody sees, you grab ammo, you see the primer, okay, it's in there. Well, what makes a primer?
Well, there's so much actual work that goes into a primer. It's amazing. I mean, you've got a little anvil, you've got a foil seal that keeps everything, you've got the mix, which is actually a different formulation for each factory, has a little bit of a different tweak. It's pretty cool. So the guys that were loyal to Remington primers, we still make them the same way Remington did it forever. That's their mix. Federal has their own, and CCI has what they do. And it's all regulated as this is the certain criteria, but it's their unique twist.
Okay.
That makes everything great. And with the cups, we build primers for everybody from the military to your average reloader to other manufacturers.
Yeah, OEM. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those where millions of primers pump out of our factory a day, over 1 billion a year.
That's a made-up number. Yeah. We've joked about this, and it seems made up, but it's not. That 1 million seconds is 11 days, and 1 billion seconds is almost 31 years.
Yeah.
So the difference between millions and billions is really hard to conceptualize. So you guys pump out over 1 billion primers a year, and that's pretty remarkable. I know there's always concerns about availability, especially as we come through an election cycle. Just know you guys are making primers.
I mean, we're making them 24/7. Honestly, the demand's just been, everybody knows this in this industry. It's been crazy. We had 12 million new customers that bought firearms. And think about it. And it's awesome. I can't wait for these people to start the sport more and then get into it. I mean, you'll have some fallout that just bought the one, but you'll have a good chunk that keep going. But when you're thinking about primers, one of the hardest things to portray to people was, well, if every one of those two just bought 2 boxes of shells, our ammunition that goes with it.
Yeah.
And you think that's 100 primers times 12 million.
Yeah. So that's a lot of primers needed.
Yeah. I mean,
that's still some amazing numbers. And so you start off, like you said, you've got a cup, you've got the mixture, and then you've got a foil seal to keep it all in there, and then you've got an anvil, a little 3-pronged anvil. And any one of those components could have a problem, but the failure rate on a primer is practically zero.
Yeah.
There's an incredible amount of R&D that goes in to even like thousandths of an inch profile, minute changes to get those things to be as reliable as possible.
Yeah, I mean, you want the right sensitivity. I mean, and that's why primers are a lot like nails. You choose the nail you need to get the job done at your house. If you're decking or if you're hanging up a picture, it's different nails, right? You're not using the same one. A primer's a lot like that too. I mean, we make like our number 41s for the military. It's a thicker cup because it's using the floating pin from an AR. And you got to make sure it's got a little thicker cup.
Right.
It really just depends on what you're needing for, and that's what we address when we're building them.
Okay.
And you got to look at the customer and what their need is, and at the same time, you got to make sure the size of the pellet of the material that goes in that ignites. You got to make sure it's the right mix to where you get a good hot burn to ignite the powder in a uniformed way, so you get your velocities you want.
Right. So that's an interesting point. You mentioned that every one of your manufacturers, CCI in Lewiston, Federal in Anoka, Remington down in Arkansas, they all have separate mixture components.
They're very similar, but they're their own unique way. I mean, when we acquired Remington, consumers like Remington for Remington. Why would we change that?
Yep.
Same. I mean, you don't change the lifeblood of something if people are happy with it.
Right.
So, I mean, it would be like Hornady deciding all of a sudden to change the color. You're never going to do that.
No.
So that's just how it goes, And
I couldn't see a blue Hornady.
But that's.
That would be weird.
Yeah, that would be very weird. But that's where it comes to. You just got to make sure you got to keep the uniqueness to it. Because I mean, it's just like everything else. There's certain people that I only use this bullet. I only use this. I only use this primer. And when they have their whole mix and they've got, especially the hand loaders, I use this primer with this powder and this bullet, and I make sure I load it this many grains, and I want consistency throughout it all. Well, they make sure I buy the exact same thing every time. So it's our job to make sure they get the exact same thing every time.
I'll just say, like, this might be more related to shot shell, but I know a lot of people are very, picky about their shot shell primers. So if they reload, like, for example, and this doesn't apply to just shot shell, but it's a material thing. You have steel, you can use brass, you can use brass plated steel. I mean, there's all kinds of different combinations, but certain people with, higher end shotguns they shoot a lot of rounds like trap shooters. They prefer the Remington brass primers because those primers are softer. They don't, etch your firing pin over a long period of time. These trap shooters are shooting 15,000 of rounds a year.
Yeah.
And that adds up. It does.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've witnessed people have malfunctions with steel primers. Then you throw a brass in there, and then all of a sudden it'll at least just get them through that trap match. Then they can get their gun service. So like that's something people take into consideration. And of course, with those different materials, you have a lot of engineering that goes into the thickness of the strip and the anvil shape and the profile and all that stuff. So the material is something else people take into consideration too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one big thing I know people take into consideration is they really prioritize buying match grade primers. If you guys would dive into what constitutes a match grade primer. I can say personally, I was all about it for a while, and then I stopped caring, and
Honestly, what makes a match grade primer match grade is when we do it, those lines are set up, and we are saying we are making match grade primers today. And 3 extra quality checks go into it, and hand looking at every one as they're getting packed goes into it. It's a lot of touches, and that's what really makes a match primer. Only the perfect get through.
Okay, so the what I would call the cake or the pellet,
Right.
which is the actual explosive compound in a primer, is largely the same.
Yeah, it's very much the same, but as far as you're just getting, what you're paying for is the reassurance that that thing's been checked 3 times, and we're going to make sure that everything is perfect in that before it goes out.
More eyes
Interesting.
on it.
And in all
Gotta pay
reality,
extra for that.
just like you said, in reality, it's a lot like our law enforcement ammo, and yours too. You're hand checking everything. That's why duty ammo costs more,
But
because
we
there's a
hand
lot more
check
touches.
every single
I know
box
you
of
guys
ammo
do.
that goes in.
I know you guys do, but when you're looking at
Yeah.
that levels of different checks, it takes a little bit, but at the same time, it gives you a whole nother surety level.
Yep.
That is the main difference in a match primer.
Yep.
It is just the quality checks that go in, and it's a mindset. You have your top level performing employees when you're doing it that have been making primers for years. It's usually not your guys you just trained on the line. It's the certified guys, that your old hands that are doing it when I go through.
Awesome. Well, that really parallels Hornady manufacturing really closely, actually, when you look at our projectiles. So we've got bullets like the ELD Match, the ELDX, and the ATIP bullet, and now the ELD VT bullet. Those bullets are held to our match accuracy standard. And that ATIP is, probably, it is the most premier match bullet on the market right now. And we make those bullets largely the same way we make an interlock, but you have the most experienced operators. You have less hands touching the machines, but the most experienced hands touching those machines, setting those bullets up. You have more quality assurance checks. You have more shots for accuracy. You have a tighter accuracy standard on those products. So the copper and the lead and a lot of the drawing processes are largely the same.
Yeah.
But what you're paying extra for and what makes them actually shoot better is the experienced hand that makes the bullet and just those more frequent QC checks.
I title it more to, it's a confidence factor.
It's extra attention to detail.
Yeah, all of our standard primers, they're going to go bang. No doubt about it. But if you want that extra assurance, you buy a match primer, because without a doubt that thing's had the highest level of checks.
Yep. That's pretty unique. And you mentioned hand inspecting. I'll take this opportunity to shamelessly plug Hornady. That some folks don't understand that about our Hornady ammunition. It is hand inspected, and you guys have been touring our facilities. I'm guessing you've seen inspection down here. We're sitting on top of it, really. That you've got employees hand inspecting ammo and hand packaging it, looking for dings, dents, scratches, oil stains, anything that makes it just not pretty. Perfectly serviceable and functional, it's just not pretty enough, so it gets hand pulled. And that's kind of a small attention to detail that you don't get everywhere else. So those match primers, that's what that gets you.
Yeah, exactly. It gets you just the extra level of checks and the surety that somebody has had eyes on every bit of that.
That's pretty cool. On the ammunition side, do you guys know if you use match primers in any of your ammunition?
Oh, yeah,
or is it
several
primer?
of our, any of our gold medal match has got match primers of sure. Any of our long range usually are running our match primers.
Mm-hmm.
Anything where we
fantastic.
need to ensure that you're taking a shot past those 300-yard markers and once in a lifetime hunts, usually we're running match primers in those.
Primers are very, very important It's a very important aspect of a load to look at if you're trying to, decrease your EVs or your SDs.
Yep.
You can get variation across a lot of primers. But if you really want to keep your SDs down or your EVs on your velocities, especially, for a long range shooter, that's incredibly important because it's all your drop and your compensations go into that. That's where that comes into play. And that's where we want to get the edge on those higher end products, those match products.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that definitely aligns with what we do at Hornady, where we have lines of ammunition that are designed for, longer ranges. And also we have lines of ammunition that are made for traditional ranges, but our ballisticians go through when they're doing the load development process and they test several varieties of primers. And they will find the primer that most uniformly ignites.
We do the same.
They look at the pressure velocity curves and they're paired specifically.
Our consumers is the same person. You got to make sure you're building them the best recipe. You got to.
Well, and I'll say this too, and there's a reason people do that, and it's because consumers are very educated nowadays, which is fantastic.
It is. The YouTube era. I feel like more people are educated just from that.
Between YouTube and people using things like chronographs, right? I mean, even now, there are chronographs coming out that are phenomenal, right? And even people within the ammunition industry are using just like a consumer. And those consumers that are testing the ammo and they're becoming educated about how ammunition is made and controlled and your velocity, all your statistics, it's important to maintain that, not only from a product performance standpoint, but it's noticed by the consumer. So that's another aspect that's really important. And like I said, it's very beneficial to the consumer to know that too. So
find the latest shirts, hats, hoodies, and accessories that you see here on the podcast and much more at HornadyGear.com.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's definitely a good cooperation. You guys keep us full of primers for our ammunition. And so for that, we thank you. I do want to jump tracks a little bit to talk about Rimfire, but kind of 17 HMR specifically. And I bring that up because, Leland, you said you work in the R&D line doing primarily Rimfire. We can talk about some new products that you guys have out here recently. But the 17 HMR was, a Hornady brainchild from senior ballistic scientist Dave Emery, who was potentially fired over that project. Which
I've seen the podcast.
Yeah, if you guys haven't heard that story, he had to shelf that project for a little bit and kind of do it in what we would call the skunk works. And then CCI agreed to make the ammo. And now when you look at Rimfire, it's remarkable. The 17 HMR is it's synonymous with Rimfire. It has become a staple, and Rimfires as a whole have become so fun. It's ridiculous. With young kids now, I got them out every single night of the week. The last month, we're outside shooting a 22. Rimfire has become so fun, and it's always been fun growing up as a kid.
I do the same thing with my daughters. It's something. It's an easy platform to learn on, and I mean, like I said, I tried to develop this like my dad did. I don't pay my kids an allowance in bricks because I kind of know where they're coming from now. I can grab those. But anytime my kids want to go, there's no question we'll go shooting, and it's almost always they can open my gun cabinet and take anything they want with us when they go, and it's always first off. There's always at least 2 Rimfires in there, and that's what we start with, and that's usually what we finish with, just plinking around having fun. It's just a good time.
It's so nice because you can pull the trigger so many times. I mean, there's no recoil.
Right.
Yeah, and it's
so
cost effective. And it's fun.
It's quiet.
Yeah.
I think Rimfire is they're like the joke, like it being a gateway drug. It really is. It's like an avenue to get into so many other aspects in firearms. And I think what I was getting at is that, if you're wanting to get into long range shooting or competition, Rimfire is a great way to do that because you can go and compete long range with Rimfire.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, 300 yards is a poke.
Oh yeah, 300 yards is like 800 yards centerfire rifle.
Mm-hmm.
So like getting into that, and then like I know I shot a lot of Rimfire in college because it was cheap. So like if you're still wanting to tune up your skills, self-defense training, shooting handguns, you can learn all the same motor skills with a handgun with Rimfire.
Steel challenge if you're wanting to learn handgun skills with that. I mean, Rimfire's just evolved, and it keeps evolving. And I mean, we listen to customers' examples. The uppercut round we just launched.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. Were you on that project?
So that was CCI product.
Yeah, that was. I worked hard on the uppercut with several. Dylan, one of our lead engineers, was on that, and Steve Monnier, that's actually here shooting with us, worked on it extremely hard. I mean, it's the first solid, well-jacketed 22 that's designed to expand and get you a great expansion and
decent
9.5 inches of penetration every time.
Yeah, from a 22 long rifle.
From a 22 long rifle, yeah.
I
mean, out of a 4-inch barrel, you're getting 950 feet per second. I mean, it's sailing and it does its job.
Yeah.
And look, I came from law enforcement. I came from self-defense training. You're going to get half of your customers are going to say 22 is way too small.
Yeah.
But you
Better
know,
than a stick.
it's better than a stick. And when I talk to our consumers, a lot of people are already carrying them. I mean, my dad, before he passed away of Alzheimer's, before he got Alzheimer's and all that, he had arthritis really bad, and all he carried was a little Beretta Bobcat because that's what he could flip up the barrel and drop a 22 round in there. Go, yeah. And so it's just like any of us. We saw the need, and if somebody chooses that, I want them to have the best thing possible to defend themselves with. If that's what you choose, here you go.
There you go.
My mom's home handgun is also a 22, but I mean, if you look at like varmint hunting, like coyotes, rabbits, all that, I mean, that's a great load for that too.
Yeah, I mean, and 22 just keeps evolving, which is awesome. It's 17 HMR. We partner with you guys on that all the time. We're making new advancements. You guys are making new advancements on bullets, and we're doing the same. And it's that innovation-friendly competition. We just keep coming out with something. Oh man, we didn't think it would get any better, but look at what that's doing now.
Right.
And then you look at 22 WMR. With all the new handguns that are coming out, it's a whole nother world again.
Yep. That is pretty cool. So coming in to the industry pretty green, no pun intended with the Remington logo there, it had to seem, okay, you're going to work on Rimfire for R&D, and you're staring at decades of track record of what's new under the sun? What are some of the projects that you worked on that you can talk about?
You definitely need to tell them about the new ranch hand.
Yeah.
He designed this whole new bullet for us with a ranch hand. It's fantastic.
So range hand is a product that is designed to be the most reliable 22 long rifle cartridge on the market. So if you have a gun that's brand new or a gun that's from the 1940s that's caked up with dirt and grime from sitting in your grandpa's garage, you should be able to run ranch hand through it with no stops. Just without a doubt, it's going to function every single time.
A lot of the manufacturers out there, they're building great guns. It's generally what we'll see is everybody knows there's some 22s that are just a little more finicky. They're a little more pickier than others.
Yep.
So what this gives you is a great product that you can run that and with reliability, and you're not having the jams, the malfunctions you would have before. We made the bullets where it's super great for feeding. It's got a better system for you get more dwell time, which gives you more back pressure. So those hammer fire guns, it runs great. And the idea was just give the consumer what they were wanting, which is the ultimate reliability for that rimfire handgun platform.
How'd the research and development on that process go? Because that's a big task. Hey, you got some guns that you can't control their functionality. Make this ammo make them work.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I'll just say, off the bat, and we've talked about it before, but putting a rimmed cartridge of any kind, centerfire, rimfire, whatever, even shot shell, which just to tie back into zombies, mag-fed shotguns are finicky, if nothing, just because of the rim on the cartridge, right? Putting those into a semi-automatic platform is kind of it's not how it was supposed to be, right? It's not necessarily how it's not supposed to be, but it's not the way it was designed, right? Typically, you have an auto-loading cartridge with an extractor groove, not a rim, right? Rims, you got lever actions, all that kind of stuff. So that fundamentally poses a problem, right? The main aspect of range hand that minimizes that is the feeding, right? You have to feed, extract, chamber, eject, and all of that needs to happen simultaneously with the gun being dirty, clean, hot, cold, all of it. So with range hand, we shot over 30,000 rounds. Actually, it was 35,000 rounds in the development of our.
Still got a callus on your trigger finger?
Oh yeah, right there. Actually, we shot a ton of rounds, and that was like us, research and development, physically shooting them, and taking note of the failures we were getting to minimize and make the next iteration, stop having that same failure we were seeing, right? I mean, it was super fine details that we were paying attention to. So we looked at the bullet profile. So for the first time since the 40s, Remington has a new profile on their bullet. So this is
groundbreaking. You going to have a podcast about that?
Yeah.
We already have.
We already have it. So, we have a new
80 years later, a new bullet profile.
So this, and that, a lot of people like that heritage profile. And,
of course.
The grooves and all those cannelers, it's definitely a Remington product staple. And a lot of those products, we make, and they still have a use, but this one needing to have a bullet that feeds as reliably as possible, we try to minimize any kind of surfaces that grab on chambers. And that's chambers from handguns to rifles to, just repeating actions, so not semi-automatics. We added a new lube to our bullet, so the wax that we have on our bullet prevents dirt from compiling in the magazine as well as in the chamber. So when you shoot these rounds over extended period of times, you don't get that on your hands, and the gun doesn't get as dirty, which helps you go longer without malfunctions. The other thing, like Jason was saying, is we spent a ton of time going into ballistic development to make a round that would cycle, light actions, heavy actions, long barrels, short barrels. That's the harder thing, right? Shorter the barrel, the less effective dwell time you can get because that bullet's not going to stay in it as long as it would in a rifle, 16-inch barrel or longer. So getting a load that works in all of those, right? We've picked out both for our hollow point and round nose the most optimized velocities, pressures to get that as reliable as possible. And then overall, just process improvements to make that round that you're going to buy as a consumer on the shelf as clean and as ready to go in any firearm as possible. So there's just a ton of development, a lot of rounds shot, really nitty gritty details, but that's what I love, and that's what all the guys at R&D love too. So
and that's a dream job. Having done that job here at Hornady, I could tell the listener that's what I live for. How long did it take you start to finish on that project? Your whole first year?
Yeah. It's been in the works for, basically since I started. So, we've had a lot of iterations. I've got a lot of ammo sitting in my office that we've tested, and we really got it down to the point where it's like, we haven't found a gun it doesn't work in. And compared to every other product that we've tested, we've beaten the best by a factor of 3. So our round or our hollow points are being shot through the most finicky guns we could find more reliably than the best round nose we can find. And hollow points are traditionally the hardest to use.
I would say that's pretty fantastic and kind of an exclamation point on the fact that our consumer, obviously everybody shot Remington products, especially, on the rimfire side of things. And I feel like there may have been a time where the development wasn't happening very fluidly, maybe at Remington. And now under this new ownership, under this new team, you guys are, doing legit.
Things are changing.
Isn't that phenomenal?
And there's a ton of new products in the pipe coming. So,
all right.
Yeah.
I like leaving it with that right there. that again, in my days working in R&D here at Hornady, there was always products in the pipeline, and everybody always wanted to just, hey, so tell me a little bit more about that. What else could you tell me? Just a little bit more. But I won't pry at you for that because that's obviously proprietary. But it's a great indicator of the innovation that's going on that we keep talking about, not just at Remington, not just at Hornady, not just at CCI, Federal, you name it, across the industry and across, all of the auxiliary companies in the industry. You talked about your 3-gun gear that you borrowed, the equipment standpoint, the way holsters change, and belts change, and magazines change, and it's a constant
you're just
drive
like
forward.
me. You've got a whole drawer at home at all the stuff that you used to use, and now you tried this new thing. Sometimes you go back, sometimes you stay with the new.
Yeah, now it just sits in a tote in my basement, largely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the peek behind the curtain in the technical aspect, and one more technical aspect that I didn't address that I feel like Slink, you should address publicly here. There is a difference between Magnum and non-Magnum primers.
Very much so.
And what is the difference, and when should they be substituted?
Magnums are generally used in Magnum cartridges for a reason. They are a hotter charge that burns for a longer amount of time. So the very variation of a Magnum cartridge, whether it be belted or anything Magnum, is it runs more powder. There's more grains.
Mm-hmm.
So to get a good uniform burn, a Magnum primer is a hotter primer that burns for a longer period of time.
And that propellant burns slower,
right.
so that's
and
why
you can
need that.
really cause a dangerous situation if you're running a max load on a standard primer and you switch. You just can't switch them.
Okay.
Because it is a stronger charge and it does burn longer. It's going to burn more uniform, so it's going to ignite that powder even faster in a smaller cartridge.
I know it doesn't seem for maybe a primer novice, the primers have the same external dimensions.
Correct.
So you wouldn't think it matters that much, but all I can tell you is the cake that's in there is so incredibly volatile and sensitive.
Very much so.
It does not take a whole lot more to make a heck of a lot more oomph to it.
And from a ballistic standpoint, with those energetic materials, I think, some people definitely, with the consumers we have nowadays, probably a lot of them know this, but primers are very, very, they have a huge effect on the pressures that build in a cartridge. That initial, that instant when that explosive burns and ignites that propellant, that pressure curve when it starts, you get extreme. I mean, thousands of PSI can change between primer usages. So that's why it's important to use the right one.
And certain guns can't handle that pressure.
No, they can't.
Well,
best thing, use your manual.
Use the manual.
Use the
Absolutely.
manual. It tells you, hey, start with this primer, this powder charge.
Yep.
Don't be the guy that starts at max.
Don't be that guy.
No.
And one thing I remember noticing with Magnum primers in a use case where they were unnecessary was what could happen I'm speculating a little bit, we would see a climb in pressure, looking at a pressure curve, a climb in pressure, a drop in pressure, and then a huge spike in pressure. So I'm speculating that the primer charge was enough that it pushed the bullet into the forcing cone, dropped the pressure because there was a huge expansion of volume, and then when the powder started to burn and it had to re-accelerate that bullet, then you went from a load that did operate at 60,000 pounds to a load that's now running 105,000 pounds.
Absolutely.
Yeah, depending on the cartridge, it could 100% work like you're saying.
Yeah.
Consider, especially in handguns, some primers have enough energy to actually push a bullet through the barrel, like engrave it in rifling and exit. So when you take it into a higher pressure scenario with rifles, it could potentially be catastrophic. So,
and I would say also in my R&D days, a standard primer where you need a Magnum primer, especially in cold weather, you're going to get hang fires. So not necessarily as much of a concern, although it could have that double burn effect where the bullet gets into the forcing cone and stops its forward momentum, and then the powder tries to push it through.
Well, again, it goes by, if it calls for a Magnum primer, you really need to run that Magnum primer because usually that's the higher grain weights. That's usually above 60
powder.
plus, grains, and you're going to make sure that you need to get that burn. A standard primer, it's going to set it off, but it's not going to give that longevity of burn that a Magnum primer will.
Right.
The Hornady Rapid Safe Keypad Vault offers quick, dependable access to your firearm while providing security from unauthorized users. The Rapid Safe Keypad Vault is constructed of a heavy-duty 14-gauge steel housing and thick steel lid for tamper-proof security. The included RFID watch band tag and RFID decal can be selectively programmed to open this safe and any other Rapid Safe you own. The Rapid Safe Keypad Vault from Hornady Security.
Excellent. Well, thanks for clearing that up and putting it out here on our platform. I think that'd be good. One last thing around the table here before we close this out that I have to ask every guest. And if you listen to the podcast, you probably know it's coming. If you haven't, hopefully you go last because then you'll have time to think about it. Now, there might be some amendments to the game. There are going to have to be some amendments to the game, especially for you two. Probably you too. However, we always ask every new guest that in a strange, weird, hypothetical world where you could have an infinite amount of guns and an infinite amount of ammo, but everything had to be the same cartridge and the same bullet. That's a tough one, but for your shooting, for your hunting, you had to narrow it down to one cartridge and one bullet. Who wants to start? Who needs the most time to think about it?
Everyone's gonna hate. I'll go first. Okay. I get made fun of for this all the time. I'm a 270 Winchester girl.
Stop the podcast.
Yep.
I'm just kidding. I mean, that's Americana.
Yeah.
It's like the modern, or it's like the old day 6.5 Creed.
Oh yeah, it's classic.
Like, people love to hate it. and it's so capable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It flies flat. I love it.
Okay. So 270 Winchester, a Jack O'Connor kind of lady. All right.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm
and
okay with it.
You got to pick a bullet.
I don't know. Oh, shoot. I shouldn't have gone first.
We can
What
come
do you
back to you.
think?
But also, bear in mind, not to change your vote. Not that I'm not a fan of the 270. You just ran your first 3-gun match. You'd already alluded to dropping tens of thousands of dollars in 3-gun equipment. I don't know if you're going to want to shoot 3-gun with the
I
270.
definitely wouldn't want to do that.
You think on the bullet.
See,
and we'll go
I'm a
across-
pistol guy at heart. I
Okay.
can go for this. It would be a 9mm
Okay.
because
Reasons?
9mm platform.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to shoot. You can carry a lot of it on you. It's got enough, if you're using a PCC time carb, I could take game with it, small game with it, no
Yeah.
problem. I could defend my life with it, no problem. It's just a perfect all around, in my opinion. And me personally, it would be a 147 grain gold dot G2.
Solid pick.
That's a solid pick.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, considering everything, I would probably end up going with 10 millimeter,
Mm.
and I would go Swift A-frame. My
Okay.
reasons for is that you could apply a Swift A-frame, being a partition bonded bullet, to both hunting and self-defense.
Absolutely.
So whereas golden saber gold dot, I was about to say golden saber gold dot.
Well, I can understand the Remington guys.
Yeah, sorry, it's just it's ingrained. Yeah. That'd be great for hunting as well. Definitely optimized for self-defense. I just think, having that ability, a little bit hotter cartridge, but yet still portable on your person. Handguns are weapons of convenience, and I like handguns. I'm just a handgun guy.
Yeah. And legal to hunt with 10 millimeters in a lot of places.
100%. Yep. And I think that, while it might not be optimal, definitely a rifle cartridge would be better for hunting. I think you can apply
for
yourself
me,
with
I'm a
it.
shooter more than I am a hunter, so that 9 is why I chose that. I mean, I'm not going to take a deer with that, but in a life and death zombie situation, I wouldn't think
Zombies,
twice about it.
yeah, they're back.
You know?
You got to think apocalypse, though.
But
like,
yeah, I mean, if
hunting,
I
you
can
need
only
food.
have one cartridge ever, though, I mean, it would kill me not to have my 9mm gun.
Yeah. It was hard not to say 9 either. I know, that's tough.
That's tough. So now that you've had some time to think about it, I'm guessing you're maybe more of a hunter. So obviously going with the 270, and Remington's got some great products in their lineup. The iconic 130 grain core lock comes to my mind.
That's where I was going to go. Thank you. I stayed classic caliber. I'm going to stay classic bullet, I think. Go with
Okay.
270.
She's a
core lock.
true Remington girl.
I am. I bleed green.
That's awesome. So I can't slight any of you for your answer other than they're not Hornady bullets, but that's that competition that we're talking about. And they are good products, absolutely. And no one can argue against a 9mm or 10mm or a 270, except for Steve Hornady. He'd probably have a different answer. But well, guys, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you guys are shooting today. Central Nebraska, this time of year, we are getting absolutely poured on.
Oh, we lucked out. We shot in the morning, so we.
Oh, you missed the rain?
Yeah, we had like
it just
1.5
started raining
people
on our
left.
last stage. It was awesome.
Yep.
Well,
we
it was-
got out and went to lunch.
Oh, it was coming down probably when you were
Yeah,
eating
it
lunch.
was. Yeah,
Yeah, and
that's
just
how it was with us last year when I was here. It was pouring.
yeah, live by the rain, die by the rain. We
That's
got
right.
5 inches the other night in not a very long period of time. And up in my neck of the woods where I live, there's some flooding going on, and there's half a town with hay bales floating down the road. But it wouldn't be a match
And
in
it's all fun.
72 and
it
sunny.
adds to it, right? It's part of the experience. Nobody over brags. At the match, it was perfect weather and it was so sunny. No, you tell the story. Man, it was raining. I almost slipped. I
Yeah,
tripped
that's your
on
reason.
this.
Like, I didn't shoot that
that's
good.
the
It was
story.
raining.
that helps too.
Yeah, built-in excuse, which
It was
I
coming
need.
down so hard I couldn't see the red dot.
Yeah, yeah, fogged up my glasses. It was horrible. Well, you guys compete tomorrow.
Yep.
So that's one thing I actually like about the 3-gun world, where if you did that at a long-range match, you'd have some very upset people because the wind, the wind trends
Change.
Right.
really low in the morning. But in 3-gun, you can break it up because this is an intense sport, a lot of movement, a lot of mental geometry. So it's nice to be able to do, the morning of one day and the afternoon of the next day. But I do, again, appreciate you guys coming on our podcast, talking about your products, talking about your podcast and the 270, and coming out to the Heartland Public Shooting Park to enjoy Zombies in the Heartland 3-gun match. So before I close this out, is there anything you want to leave the folks with?
Just, hey, get out there, shoot as much as you can, have fun, try something new. like I said, before I started shooting competitively, I didn't know if I was going to like it. You're never going to know until you try it.
Yep.
So
News
just keep
11
trying
this
new
just
stuff,
in.
yeah.
You'll probably like it.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much stuff that can gauge your interest. I mean, if you're just doing 22, try an NRL 22 match. You know, there's all kinds of stuff out there. And
Steel challenge.
you know,
I mean,
everything in competition is applicable to hunting. It's applicable to self-defense. It's just great. It lets you shoot under stress and everything else. That's what I would recommend. Just try something.
Yep,
Go
I
out and just
think
try one thing. Like I tell my employees every year that work for me, I want one new thing a year that you're going to try. That's a sport that you haven't tried yet in the shooting world. You don't have to like it, but I want you to try it and see. And then next year, try something different.
Yeah. To piggyback off of that, leading more shotgun. I mean, like, there's so many worlds out there: trap shooting, sporting clays, five stand, like
Skeet, bunker
Yeah.
trap.
Skeet, yeah. And I didn't learn about it until I got into the industry. So I think if you just, quick Google search, find something that you haven't done yet.
Yeah, that does sound like a good time.
I'll just say, if you want to do any of those things too, people in the gun industry are pretty friendly. Just go out and do it. Like, people will help you get into it
They
and
will.
show you the ropes,
Yep.
and soon enough you'll be showing the next guy how to do it.
Yep.
So
I've literally witnessed at a PRS match somebody have a trigger go down. Somebody that they did not know in their squad went to their vehicle, got their training rifle out, which by training rifle, I don't mean like, a 22.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it
Anytime.
was a Defiance action with a HS barrel in a Manor stock with a, loophole
yeah.
45
Oh,
on
yeah.
it. Oh, yeah, yep, you can shoot this. This is just, my old, 6.5 Creedmoor.
this is my beater.
Yeah, go run the match with that, and gave him the ammo, and the guy finished out the match, and
Great people. I
it's
mean, it's
great
like that at
people.
every match. I mean, it's nice. I mean, heck, I carry a bag of spare parts every 3-gun match I go, just in case somebody's stuff goes down, I can help them out. I mean, that's
Yep.
what it is, because I'd like somebody to do that for me if it happens. So,
Yeah. Excellent, guys.
a good old golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yep. It's a small industry, and
Exactly.
you got to treat people with respect, or you'll get weeded out of here.
Very
Yep.
much so.
That's right.
Quickly.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks again, guys. If you
Thank
don't
you,
have
Seth.
anything else, I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah,
No,
Thanks for
appreciate
having
having
us.
us. It was great.
All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Hornady Podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed kind of a technical look at maybe some of the rimfire stuff from Remington and the world of primers with CCI. Don't forget to check out the Remington Podcast hosted by Audrey. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you on the next one.